Hello, I'm Harry Riley. Welcome to Harry's 10-Minute Tales. This is called Chalky White by Harry Riley. This story is fiction, but was inspired by real events of the time, and resemblance to anyone, living or dead, is coincidental. Queen Victoria's British Empire was expanding its influence around the globe in 1877. It meant nothing, though, to orphan Charlie Black, a Glasgow petty thief, drop out from school and drop out from work. In fact, a drop out from almost anything he'd ever tried. His teachers had consigned him to the rubbish heap of life, destined to join the flotsam and jetsam, to be found on every street corner, in every town of the land, endlessly hunting for the pot of gold, which only existed in the minds of get-rich-quick merchants and layabouts. Nobody had yet managed to create a spark in Charles. It seemed his mind was devoid of any real value whatsoever. Today he was on his way to try another job, working for a boot and shoe mender, but with no real passion for the task ahead, he was soon distracted by an unusual occurrence. Charles Black heard the urgent sound of the band and quickly hopped off the tramcar that was taking him to town. This marching band was so vibrant it captured his imagination. He had to stop and listen as it drew closer. The stirring music held him enraptured. This was it. This was what life was all about. The pounding of the big bass drum and the skirl of the pipes set his eyes alight with interest and got him thinking, if only I could be a piper too. He stayed hypnotised as the marching men drew nearer. The leading soldier, swinging his mace, throwing it high into the air and then miraculously catching it again, a ramrod frame, wearing the tartan of the islanders, as he led the procession with great panache. Their tune, as they swaggered proudly into view in the town centre, was over the hills and far away. Without realising quite what he was doing, Charles had joined the laughing procession of young ragtags jigging along behind. The burly recruiting sergeant took up station in the square, and using a soldier's back as a makeshift table, quickly signed on many of the out-of-work followers. 17-year-old Charles Black was mesmerised, and with his fire well and truly lit, and burning brightly, lied, signing on as 19-year-old Charles White, soon to possess the inevitable barrack room nickname of Chalky. Within a few weeks of basic training, young Charles's sunshine disposition had taken a severe beating, and he meant to desert the first chance he got. He was a free spirit, and being bullied into submission was beyond a joke. However, new recruits were watched very closely, and it was not long before he found himself being shipped off to South Africa to fight the Zulus. Not being an aggressive lad, his only real pleasure was in training to be a piper. This he found absorbing, and pursued each lesson with great gusto. Shortly after disembarking on foreign soil, the Glaswegian was dispatched to the Natal border and involved in a minor enemy skirmish, which left him concussed by a vicious knobkerry club and wandering alone, lost in the bush. His story might well have ended there, but for several Zulu warriors who found him as they were returning to their kraal. Unceremoniously he was hauled along with them and dumped in front of their leader, who happened to be none other than Prince Tablamazi, brother of King Cetshwayo. The prisoner was prodded to make him beg for his life. Instead, the half-crazed Scot just sat on the ground and started singing, over the hills and far away. His captors looked to the prince for enlightenment, and he was clearly amused. With many exaggerated gestures, the Zulus encouraged Charles to carry on singing, and then, failing to understand why they'd allowed him to live, he meekly let himself be led away into easy, almost pleasant captivity. For the first time in his young life he felt valued. These smiling people really seemed to like him. Eventually he began to understand the language, enough to be aware that for some strange reason he was under the chief's protection. Noticing increased activity one day, he was brought in front of the leader, and a set of bagpipes was thrown at his feet. He could have danced for joy. Now he could really show them some great Scottish music. The instrument was in good condition, and after tuning up, he entertained his regal audience with several tunes, including The Green Hills of Tyrol and Flowers of the Forest, a lament for the Scottish fallen of Flodden Field. The prince spoke sharply, his words translating as, "You can keep the sheep that squeals, we have work for you." Soon, struggling to keep up, the piper would run with hundreds of warriors as they set off to fight the British invaders. Camping in the open that night, there was great excitement as a messenger arrived. Charles caught the word as under Warner being repeated, and realised the Zulus had won a great victory over the invaders. Next day they set off again, and stopped at the sound of intensive battle being waged across the Buffalo River at a mission post. Charles stayed with the prince's group, taking no part in the violent attacks. The bright coats and white helmets of the British soldiers were clearly visible behind their barricades down in the valley as they repulsed ferocious Zulu onslaughts. Their fixed bayonet, Martini Henry rifles, were making short work of the natives, mowing them down in swathes. But still they came on, and on remorselessly. All through that long day the few defenders of the post fought against overwhelming odds, as buildings all around them went up in smoke. Dead and dying were everywhere. And then at last, as light was fading, the prince directed his native hordes to line up on the ridge. Unanimously they raised their spears and cowhide shields, giving vent to the chilling Zulu war cry. Lifting his assegai for silence, the chief pulled them back and ordered the young Scot to march to the ridge and play. Too late. Charles realised the clever Zulu leader wanted the defenders tricked into believing reinforcements were arriving. The clear sound of the bagpipes drifted across to the weary defenders, and in shocked silence they listened to, over the hills and far away, being played by the lone piper. But by pulling back, the Zulu plan had misfired. The redcoats cheered. They were reinvigorated and reminded of home. And then a survivor thought he recognised the piper. Why, it's wee Chalky White, a ghost if ever there was one. And look, see you, he scared the enemy away. That night the Zulu army, having failed to dislodge the invaders, called off their attack and disappeared, together with a piper, who was never seen again. When reinforcements finally got through to the beleaguered men, all they could talk about was the brave Scot, who had appeared from nowhere and who, by his inspired playing, had given them the courage to fight on when they were all but done. Charles White was granted a posthumous decoration for gallantry. However, there were no family members to receive it, probably owing to his false name on taking the Queen's shilling. As yet the medal still lies unclaimed in military archives, but his legend lives on. End.